Good afternoon and welcome to the Londoners News. I'm Amy.
And I'm Maliyah, and we're your hosts for today. How are you, Amy?
I'm really well, excited for today.
I'm excited too. So we've got a jam-packed show for you today with reports from all across London, so make sure you stay tuned.
In King's Cross, Float is exploring the new matcha trend, which is taking over the city.
Amy discusses the rise in sustainable fashion by talking to charity shop owners and small business owners.
Taaseen gets creative in a workshop run by Twickenham blacksmiths.
And over in southeast London, Halima discusses the rise in camera technology.
Maliyah visits a hybrid cinema pub venue, which will be really exciting. But first up, our reporter Chris has been investigating the difficulties faced by pubs across southwest London.
Since 1980, Britain has lost over 20,000 pubs. Behind me is Picture and Piano, a once thriving bar that closed for the final time in June last year, making it one of over 400 bars and pubs which closed in 2024. What's gone wrong? Is it a more puritanical attitude to drinking, or the fact that here in the capital, a pint can cost £8? Is it the cost of living crisis, where fewer of us can afford to go out?
But why do pubs matter? I spoke to some local students to see what pubs mean to them and to their social lives.
Just as a young person, it's a way to let loose and socialise with everyone.
And, we often play games in the pubs. We take part in pub quizzes, which is always fun. Without it, I do feel like I would struggle a lot more because I'm not able to see as many people as I would like to.
Last year, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, announced a national insurance hike that will affect the hospitality trade more than any other sector. With taxes on the rise, could this be the final nail in the coffin for Britain's pubs?
I spoke to Barbara, known as Babs to the locals, who runs the Albany in Twickenham. I asked her if she's noticed a difference in drinking culture with young people and how these new government changes will affect publicans like her.
I think running pubs has always been a bit challenging, but in the last couple of years, really since COVID, it just feels that it's an increasing amount of challenges. Business rates, the price of our staffing costs have majorly increased. Unfortunately, what you can't do is pass all those costs directly on to the customer because we'd be charging £10 a pint.
Do you think the cost of living is having an effect on the number of people who come out to the pub?
Oh, definitely. So, and I know that not just from my customers, but from my friends and my social groups. You would have possibly popped out a couple of times a week to meet up with people and to meet friends, and that just doesn't happen. You meet up once. And to be fair, also engagement on phones and I think a lot of that has stopped that sort of social interaction because you're doing it all the time. You're always in contact with so-and-so and so you don't need to arrange to meet in a pub. I'd say my electricity's doubled. We have been lucky with having a rates relief since COVID, basically. We'd had I think, slight reduction just before COVID, then it really went down to nothing. And then it's great that we still got a relief. I mean, but you've got to look at what are you taxing? Why are we paying this business when online businesses and all that sort of stuff are not paying these rates? It does feel that we're sort of taxed slightly unfairly. With business rates, you don't really feel you're getting anything for it either.
How much of a difference will the increase in national insurance contributions make to you?
It's about $1,000 to $1,100 a year on someone per member's team if they were doing a 35-hour week. I think I'd worked something like that. So if you had 5 full-timers, it's an extra 4 or 5 grand that you need to find. The main thing that makes it harder is cost. It's the amount that we know how to pay, obviously to the members of my team, but the increase in what we're paying in national insurance, it's just all these little add-ons all the time. And that's got to come out of the price of a pint.
Do you think then that the increase in people going to the park and drinking in public is actually damaging the reputation of drinkers, perhaps increasing antisocial behaviour?
I think increasing antisocial behaviour. I think the perception of drink from when I was first drinking at 18 and to my 20s, it was always sort of seen as something you do at the weekends and it's fun. The perception now of drinking, I think, in a lot of cases, particularly that antisocial drinking in parks and outside, is much frowned upon, and not just by an older generation.
What do business rates actually include?
That's a good question. Oh, I literally couldn't tell you. They don't. I don't know what I get for my business rates. I would say street cleaning, but actually I clean most of the streets. I'd say after rugby days, maybe street clean. No, but we clear up all that area, you know, of all the waste that's created, which we should do because we've got residents. But then when I talk to them, so I have extra waste just for those days a year, they want to charge me more money to pick up extra waste. What do we get for our business rates? I do not know.
Christopher Chalmers, Londoners News, Richmond upon Thames.
So we're currently here in the studio with Chris to discuss the challenges faced by independent pubs. So Chris, for those who don't know, what is an independent pub?
Yeah, so an independent pub is basically like any other pub, but it isn't attached to a national chain. So chains include Young's, Wetherspoons, Fuller's, places like that. Pubs that are part of those chains have the security of, you know, a national company, which makes it a lot easier for them to, you know, have a bad month. Independent pubs have no backing whatsoever, often a family-run affair, and they really struggle. They can't drive prices down like these massive chains can.
I understand. You seem to know a lot about this subject. So why are you so kind of passionate about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think pubs have been a big part of, you know, growing up, and I always enjoyed going to pubs with friends. I think they're just a great sort of social venue. You know, you can spend time with your mates, catch up over a pint. You know, I think they're a really key part of a lot of people's lives.
Definitely. So how difficult are the circumstances that these independent pubs face?
Well, very hard. To put it in context, Marston's, Young's and Wetherspoon have recently published trading figures which are better than expected. These chains are not struggling at all, they're doing pretty well. Independent pubs, since COVID, have been really struggling. You know, people aren't going to the office, so Thursday, Friday drinks aren't happening like they used to. They're, you know, really suffering a fall in, you know, demand and people going to the pub. And prices are going up. I mean, electricity and gas in some cases have more than doubled. So their costs are skyrocketing and they have fewer customers, and inevitably that pushes prices up, and then fewer people can afford to go.
Mm-hmm. And when exactly did things get harder for the pub trade?
Most people I've spoken to would say since COVID. Although they did get a business rates relief, they have particularly struggled with the fall in demand following COVID. You know, the circumstances around that whole time, fewer people going to the pub, more people were sort of drinking at home, and apparently they've continued to do so. And, you know, the last 4 years has been particularly tough. They just haven't got the same number of people coming back like they used to.
Mm-hmm. I think we all know that you love pubs, Chris, but I wondered, why are they so important to the UK?
Yeah, I think they're a national institution, really. I mean, it's sort of like a community hub in a lot of places, you know, a local where people meet up and socialise, and, you know, it's almost like a place of worship, without wanting to sound like an alcoholic, but it's one of those things where really a cornerstone of any community, you know, there's a local where people can meet and chat, and, you know, I think really it's a national institution about.
Mm-hmm. And following on from that, do you have any recommendations for us of your favourite pubs in the area?
Yeah, well, in the sort of Twickenham and Richmond upon Thames area, personal favourites, I mean, independent pubs, which there are very few of, but there's a Rifleman. That's a very, very nice sort of warm place and really nice locals and a good landlord. I'd say the Crown, just down the road from here, that's a really nice one. That is part of a chain, but it's a great boozer. And probably my favourite, I'd have to say, would be the White Cross, simply because as the tide rises, then you end up getting watered in and you can't leave.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, Chris.
Thank you.
Next up, if you're looking for an alternative and trendy pub experience, then don't go anywhere, as Maliyah has been to visit the Fellowship Inn.
If you travel to Bellingham, South East London, and take a very short 2-minute walk from the right side of the station, you will find what looks to be a regular pub. However, the Fellowship Inn is far from your average pub.
My name's Lenya. I'm the General Manager of the Fellowship Inn. We've got 4 different sections. We've got the pub, which is a beautiful Edwardian Grade 2 listed original space, which runs serving drinks to the community. We've got the food in-house recently, We've got pool table, karaoke, sports. We've also got the function room, which can hold up to 250 people. So sometimes we have people hosting their own events. We have lots of successful comedy nights in, theatre shows, that sort of thing. Private parties for adults, children's birthday parties. We're licensed for weddings as of last week, so that's exciting. Hope to be hosting some soon. We've got one in September, certainly. And then during the week, it's used for sort of non-hospitality, like community classes, like yoga. There's a choir, there's exercise classes. Then we've got the cafe, which is where we're sat now, which just serves pastries and toasties and hot drinks. So we have people popping in and out all day long. And then lastly, the cinema, which is currently only open for private hire, but we are hoping to start doing some public screenings in the next couple of weeks. I like the variety of things to do. It's a big business with a lot of challenges. I think most of the local community, myself included, because I live on the Bellingham estate, are sort of aware of the ups and downs of the last sort of 5 years or so. We only took it over middle of January, so it's only been about 2.5 months. So it's getting that opportunity to listen to what people want, take all that feedback on board and try and make those changes. My intention was that there would be something for everyone here, serving all of Catford, which is a really diverse area in whatever way that you look at it. So, you know, that at least once a month, everybody would have a reason to visit the fellowship. So be it that they're coming to the pub to watch the sports or for a Sunday roast, or they're attending a party or holding their own party or an arts event, coming to the cinema or popping into the cafe, that everybody has something here this is for them. Catford Muse closed down, I think about 6 or 8 months ago, which was obviously in Catford Centre, and was extremely popular. I used to go there all the time. And I know recently the Bromley Picture House was also shut down. So there aren't any cinemas in Lewisham, I don't think. So I think we would be the only one. So the main intention as far as like the programming is concerned is probably to start off with some parent and baby screenings, so like matinees, and then maybe add in some family films, like children's films on sort of Saturday, Sunday mornings, and then obviously add in films for grown-ups Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. I think we're looking mainly at starting off doing more cult classics, so it's sort of something to do in the local area when you're just you're looking for something to do. You don't want to travel too far, spend too much money, but want to get out the house. That's what I think we'll be aiming for. The main plan for the future, well, the near future, is just to get everything up and running. Like when we took the pub, the pub itself had been open but had very limited opening hours, so we've extended those. The kitchen had been hired out to a third party, so we've bought that in-house. The cafe hadn't been opened at all for several years, and as you can see, it's open now. And the cinema has been out of use. So that's the main next thing that's coming, is the cinema. It's the thing that everybody's always asking me about, is the cinema going to be open? So that's the main thing for the future. Obviously, we've just got the wedding licence as well, so that's going to be new. And also pub quiz, I get asked about quite a lot, and that definitely is on our agenda as well, for the pub quiz and the cinema to be open. And then from there, it's just more about maintaining the place and making sure that the standards, the standards are high and remain that way for the whole time that we're here. The freeholder here is the local housing association, who are pretty good as far as landlords are concerned, actually. So we like to work closely with them, and sometimes they host events here. We are directly below Lewisham Music, who are upstairs at the fellowship, and they use all of our spaces for various things, like public performances and rehearsals and that kind of stuff, like large groups. Like I said, we've got multiple user groups, lots of fitness classes using the space at the moment. So being fully integrated into the community is something really important to us. And there's a lot of different ways that we can achieve that and keep going with it.
So I'm now joined with Maliyah. Really enjoyed watching your video. Looks like a place I would love to visit. So I wondered what your opinions were when you visited the Fellowship Inn.
When I first saw the Fellowship Inn, it was on social media, so it was a TikTok of someone that had actually hosted their birthday. then I thought, like, it's underneath a pub, like, that's so cool. I wonder how it would work. So that's how I first got my idea for making the video. And then I reached out to them. They were really nice, and they said, you know, you can come, you can get some footage. And when I went there, I was so shocked, because the building, it does, from the outside, it just looks like a standard pub, like, and then you go inside and it's 3 different spaces: an event space, cinema space, and the pub space. And the way that it's formatted is just so interesting, because you've got the cinema downstairs, and then the event space upstairs, and the pub kind of just right there in the middle. And even the cinema, I know I saw it on TikTok before, but when I actually went there, it just looked so cool to me. Like, just, it kind of gave like old school vibes, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And is this venue something that intrigues you?
Definitely. I think the cinema is probably the thing that intrigues me the most, because that idea of like watching something like a kind of new kind of film in like an old school cinema, because the cinema actually existed many years ago and it actually burnt down and it was rebuilt. So the idea of kind of watching cinema in something that's considered like a piece of history was really interesting to me. I mean, in terms of the pub is not something that entirely interests me, but you know, I do love a pub. I love to have a good time as well, and the event space would be something good for, like, you know, anyone that's hosting any kind of event. So yeah, it's definitely something that interests me.
Mm-hmm. And the cinema looks really cool and old school. So yeah, what makes it different from others in the area?
I think, first of all, the look. You don't really see cinemas that look the way they do anymore. Mm-hmm. It's also, technically, it would count as an independent cinema now as well. But also, I think the most interesting thing is the fact that it's the only cinema in the area. So, as mentioned in the video, there was a place called the Catford Mews, and then another place called the Bromley Picture House, which I think is related to another place called the Greenwich Picture House. But I think now the Greenwich Picture House and the Fellowship would be the only cinemas in that kind of general area, and the Fellowship is probably one of the only cinemas in that kind of Lewisham, kind of Catford area currently. So if somebody wants to go and watch a film, they'd have to travel a far way out. But once the Fellowship's open for screening, they wouldn't have to do that anymore, and I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. And what demographic do you think the venue would attract?
I think it can definitely attract a younger demographic, because you've got people, I feel like a lot of young people, what they go to do, like to have fun, they watch films. A lot of younger people like to go to the pub. But actually, in general, I actually think it attracts everyone. I think they've got something for everyone. Those that may not like to party, they can go to the pub, have a drink, kind of chill, have something to eat. People that want to rent the event space, if they want to have a party, if they want to do, they actually officiate for weddings now, so if they want to go to a wedding or any kind of other event. And then the cinema is definitely good for cinema goers and anyone really. Like, it'd also be good for like people that are like very into cinema, what they call like film buffs, and like cinema lovers, because it's kind of like very, I don't know, when I think of cinema, I think of a place that looks like that, if that makes sense. Yeah. So like that, and watching a film that you love in a place like that it'd be quite an interesting experience.
Yeah, definitely an experience. Are there any films that you would like to see?
I think in the video it was mentioned that Linnea said she wanted to start by putting out like cult classics and like kind of more niche films, and like having events there. I think starting with like niche films, or like I said, films that would attract like cinema buffs, cinema lovers, whatever you want to call it, would be really interesting and really like cool to have, as for reasons I mentioned before. But also, once they've opened for screening, I'd hope that they can get like a regular schedule going out, so that they open up more, and that they have how do I explain it? They have films for people, for everyone, for everyone, and
all
like
ages, yeah,
and like regular cinemas. Oh my gosh, regular films. So like, what's come out recently, like Sinners. It'd be cool to like watch Sinners in that cinema.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Do you think the Fellowship will see a rise in popularity once it's open for public screening?
Definitely. I think once they've opened, they've kind of now, well, obviously they're doing advertising currently, but they will kind of introduce themselves as a space for the community, by the community. So having that idea of, people coming in, having multiple different forms of entertainment that just attracts all kinds of different people, not even just from the Catford area, but from all over London really, because it's kind of a new form of entertainment. You don't really see pubs and cinemas combined really.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for joining us, Maliyah. Really enjoyed speaking to you. And continuing on from this, in the last decade there has been a resurgence in photography. Our reporter Halima has spent time exploring this trend and how it's influencing the photography scene in London.
Film or digital? In London, more people are picking up cameras, but which kind? I'm here to find out. I spoke to collectors, camera owners, and a photographer to see what's really behind the lens of this growing trend.
I've just been a huge fan of film photography for many years, sort of in my mid-20s. I just sort of discovered analog photography. This was about the year 2000, so it was before digital really became as big as it is now. So I kept buying all these great cameras and learning more about analog photography. And I got to the point where I set up a blog about film photography because I was so interested in it. About 2012. From there, a friend of mine in Japan released his own film. He runs a blog as well, Japan Camera Hunter, and he released a black and white film. That inspired me to do the same. 2017, Cosmophoto also became a film brand. And then a few years later, I decided to set up Camera Bureau, which is part of Cosmophoto, and that's selling film cameras, second-hand film cameras, and aiming at sort of the less expensive side of the market. You know, film photography is such a broad church, and it can be quite confusing for some people. There's so many types of cameras, there's so many different types of film. So I just wanted to help people who are maybe looking for a beginner camera or in the early stages of their film photography journey. Okay, there seems to be this new generation who are coming into film, and that sort of explosion in interest, which I think was partly a result of social media, people seeing not only the pictures that people were sharing taken on their film cameras, but sometimes just the film cameras themselves. Some of them are such interesting looking objects. I think that spawned a whole new generation of people who were just interested and wanted to give it a go.
Film in the back, and you would put that to daylight, it would expose it, and it would show on the film.
Digital photography is a big part of my own personal work. I primarily use digital cameras as it speeds up my workflow. I primarily work in fashion and portraiture. I also work with events as well. Film photography is quite nostalgic to me. All my pictures from my early childhood were taken on film cameras, and the colours and the tones and textures, it's very hard to replicate with a digital camera. Recent years, film photography has really taken a large resurgence among younger people in Gen Z. I think people were searching for a bit of nostalgia in their pictures. There's a limit to how much popularity it can get because film photography is quite prohibitively expensive. Shooting a single roll of film, once you take into account the costs of the film and the developing and the scanning, can easily add up to over £25 for 36 photos. So it is quite a luxury still at this point. Most photographers will shoot a combination of both digital photography and film photography. I don't think film cameras and film photography will overtake digital photography. It's still a very small part of the wider photography market, and it can't replace those digital workflows. Olympus OM2 camera with a 50mm f1.8 lens. It's a very great lightweight lens that lets in a lot of light in the dark as well. 70s to the 90s. It's basically a studio workhorse, and any older picture from that era you see would have likely been taken on this. This would have been the more popular model, whereas this one would have been a cheaper version.
We're now joined by Halima. I loved your video. I think it was cool to see all the different types of cameras. So what problems do small photography businesses face?
So Stephen Downing from Cosmo Photos, he dived into this topic. He said that there's a limited access of capacity with the film and the roll, and because of Brexit there has been a shortage in cameras being sent to him or rolls being sent to him, which is slowing down the process for his business.
Wow, that's crazy. How does the process of film developing work?
It's a very long process. People tend to go to the film photography shops, or they just do it at home, which I think is a lot easier because it's a lot cheaper. And it requires to load the film, and you need to do it in a setting where it's dark so the film doesn't get damaged. And you have to heat up a developer solution, which is what's supposed to make the film look more clean. And then you have to wash the film with a stabilizer, and you have to hang and dry your film, so it's a long process.
Yeah, it sounds very technological. Is it like those films in the movie, the Red Rooms?
Yeah.
You dip it in the...
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you feel like the younger generation are getting more involved in using film cameras and rather than shooting on their phones?
I feel like definitely there is an increase with people using film cameras rather than their phone because of TikTok and Instagram. People tend to use these platforms and then they get inspo, oh I really want to do that, and then they check Vinted or eBay for a film camera.
What differences did you find between film cameras and digital cameras during your video recordings?
So I found that film cameras are a lot expensive than digital cameras because it's a lot older than a digital camera. So films are usually stored in massive rolls that are physical film strips, but digitals are just through an SD card, which is a lot easier and you can just restore your own thing. But film, it requires a high resolution, so the film shot will be more clearer than a digital camera.
Wow, that's really cool.
I wondered, when did film cameras come into popularity?
So post-war period, around the 1950s and the 1960s, analog photography came into popularity. Alex Falk from Mr. Cad, who was showing off the cameras, he had a camera from the 1950s, and he was just showing me how it's a lot ancient now and it's a lot common. And he's actually a collector, so he collects a lot of cameras, which is very interesting.
Oh really?
Yeah.
And what are some of the popular brands of film and digital cameras across London?
So from what I've researched, film cameras that are very popular in London are the Olympus camera and the Pentax, and then Canon and Nikon. But for digital, it's the Canon, Sony and Nikon and Panasonic cameras that are very popular.
Perfect. And I wondered if you had any advice for people wanting to get into photography?
As someone who is a fan lover of photography and went to a film college, I would just say experiment and try new shots, because you never know what you'll come across, and always have a camera with you because it would be interesting to whatever you come across. But also you should be very patient, especially with a film camera. It just takes a while, but with digital it's a lot straightforward. So I recommend if anyone's getting into film cameras, they should just get the regular ones that Stephen Downing spoke about.
Wow, thank you, Halima. Very inspirational. Well, speaking on the changing trends in the capital, there has been a recent rise in independent cafes and an increasing number of people that are leaving their 9-to-5s to pursue their kind of dreams and their passion projects. Flo met with a younger cafe owner who started her own business.
In London's bustling King's Cross, a brand new and exciting cafe has just opened its doors. Frothy is the result of one daughter's courageous career leap, a father's entrepreneurial support, and a growing online community following along for the journey.
Hi, I'm Hanifet, I'm 25. I love matcha, I love cafes, I love going on solo dates. I left university, I started working within social media. I had an office desk, used to sit with my computer 9 to 5. To be honest, I was quite unhappy. And I just remember this one day where I sort of had a little bit of a breaking point. I knew that I would eventually leave and pursue something different. So I just took the leap. And it was actually my dad who helped convince me to leave. About a year and a half ago, we had an idea to start a cafe together. He backed me 100%, and I feel like we've really taken that into this business. He's always been so supportive of everything I do. I remember the day I stood in the kitchen with my dad and I said to him, do you know what, why don't we open a cafe? I mentioned matcha too, and obviously by that point he'd seen me make it every day in the kitchen, so he knew what it was. And he was like instantly all in. Over the past like 2 or 3 years, I've definitely learned a lot more about it, and I've become a bit of an addict, and I absolutely love matcha. I've always been less of a coffee lover, so I feel like it gave me the option to have something else whenever I do go out to cafes. Ever since I sort of left my 9 to 5 job and I had a little bit more free time as a freelancer, I sort of developed this love for going on solo dates, and I definitely wanted to document that on my TikTok channel as well, so I did. It's really nice to know that I've built this small community online. Knowing how businesses use social media to their advantage has sort of really given us that motivation to start a business. A lot of cafes in LA, Copenhagen, Amsterdam have some really cool funky drinks, and that's sort of lacking in London. So that was a lot of the inspiration behind the business itself. We definitely wanted to have a little bit of emphasis on cold foam. I feel like we don't really get that kind of thing in the UK, and I definitely think that the Earl Grey Double, which is the Earl Grey matcha, Earl Grey cold foam, is gonna do really well. I know of all the sort of big matcha suppliers around the world that all come from Japan. I tested like 40 samples to pick the right one. So I wanted to supply something really good for the customers. So I made sure that I picked one that I really liked. We want to offer a space for people to come at night in the evening, because I don't think that's really available in London. We're laptop friendly, we've got lots of plugs and lots of space for people to come and work. If your 9 to 5 isn't right for you, you're not meant to be there. You shouldn't stay. You're wasting time. We don't know how long we're going to live. Don't stay somewhere you're not happy. And if your love for something else outshines your current job, I feel like the world deserves to see it.
My name is Ramadan. I started in the catering business when I was 18 with my father. He had 2 restaurants, and I became the manager of both restaurants at the age of 18. As I came out of school, my father's request, I became an entrepreneur from a very young age. I don't regret it, but it's a very tough and very demanding industry to be in. My daughter's idea was to have a trendy cafe. I'm convinced that matcha is a growing trend, and I believe in her 100%. I've got confidence that we can make this successful and specialise in our matchas. Actually, I'm not a fan of matcha. I love coffee, but my daughter loves matcha. I've been watching her make matcha at home for a long time. She's very good at it, and she knows top quality matcha and the taste. So I believe it's going to be a very good partnership, and we're very happy. I'm very excited for the launch. I'd like to see the actual response that my daughter has created through her channels, through her social media skills. And it'll be interesting to see how these younger generation will react to what we've got set up here. What I'd like to say to anyone that wants to start a business, it's not as easy as you may imagine. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of resilience. You can throw a lot of money into a business, but if you don't have any experience and you don't actually have a vision, it can collapse very quickly. This is nervous for me because I would like this to be successful for both of us, my daughter and myself. And you know, I've said to her, you need to be very positive, you need to be focused, and you just never give up, and the rest will come.
A year and a half ago, Frothy was just an idea. Now it's open to the public, a short walk from the beautiful Regent's Canal. Serving matcha, coffee and baked goods, Frothy is one family's dream brought to life.
So we're now joined by Flo in the studio. I feel like I always see you with a matcha in hand, so it was really interesting to watch your video. So how did you first hear about Hanife and her cafe?
So I am a matcha fan myself, as you just made everyone aware. And I was scrolling on TikTok and I came across a video of her and her dad talking about how they were starting a business together and wanted to open a cafe. And I was fascinated. She was talking about how she left her 9 to 5, and a lot of my friends have been doing the same, and so I was interested in her journey, and yeah, I wanted to know more about what she was going to do and how they were going to turn matcha into a business.
And what's one thing that you think viewers should take away from the story of how Frothy came to be?
Yeah, so a lot of people are really hesitant in turning their passions into a career. It's quite a difficult thing to do, and there's a lot of job instability at the moment. So people are very cautious, as they should be. According to Pittman Training and census-wide research, 84% of 16 to 24-year-olds are unsure on how to turn their passions into a career. And as Hanife's father, Ramadan, mentioned, it's not a step to take lightly, and you need to have knowledge and you need to really research before you do something like that. But if you're passionate and you do get that experience, it can be worthwhile in the long run to prevent some career dissatisfaction.
Definitely, it's definitely a big jump to take. Speaking of, did Hanife ever talk about the risks that she took or any fears that she may have had before opening a cafe?
Yes. So she mentioned that she didn't realise how much work it actually would be in terms of physical space and turning a completely empty shell into a fully functioning cafe. It's a lot of work. It comes down to, getting everything functional and the design to look the way she wanted as well, bringing that to life. And she said all the hard work, though, just makes her even more proud of the end result.
What did you personally find was kind of the most inspiring thing about even going through this process?
Yeah, so her story is really inspirational. She built an online community of over 19,000 followers through human connection and just being quite a relatable person, and talking about how she wanted to leave her 9 to 5 and become a freelancer and eventually open her cafe. And I thought that was really inspiring. So a lot of people are afraid of going places on their own, and she started a TikTok series about going on solo dates and how to be on your own and be comfortable in that, and realise that not everyone's paying attention to you. Everyone's more focused on themselves, so just go out, be confident. Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Flo loves going on solo dates.
I do.
So what's your favourite place to go and things to do?
Yeah, so I love trying out different cafes, and I'm a reader, so I normally take a book with me, sit for a few hours and drink a matcha, explore different cafes across London. And as matcha has increased a lot more now, a lot of even just chain cafes are serving them. A report from Orion Market Research found in 2023, matcha actually saw a 202% increase in sales in the UK, and it's only continued to grow since. So that's definitely part of my little solo dates. I like to find out who has the best matcha in London.
Definitely. So you tried some of Frothy's matcha. Could you give us a little review?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I went a little bit before the opening day and I had an Earl Grey matcha. It was lovely. I've never had anything like it. I definitely think their menu is different from everyone else's, so it was really, really exciting to try something new.
And I'm curious, what are the benefits of drinking matcha, especially compared to things like coffee?
Yeah, so a lot of people are hesitant to try matcha, or they'll just rather drink their coffee instead. But the best thing about matcha, when you're comparing it with coffee, is that the caffeine in the green tea powder is really slowly, so you get the benefits that you would get from coffee, the alertness, being awake, without the anxious jitters. So it's definitely worth it. There's also lots of antioxidants, it improves brain function and reduces stress.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing.
Give it a go.
During your kind of filming, you kind of showed like the nice interior and the design of the coffee shop and like some clips of the crowd during the launch. What would you say were some of like the best moments you kind of caught on camera or you witnessed yourself?
Yeah, so the interviews I did with Hanife and Ramadan were a few days before the launch. And so they were really excited and nervous to see, what kind of outcome they would have from Hanife's TikToks and the community she's built. And I revisited a few days after the launch day, and it was full of life. There were people just enjoying their drinks, people working all day. It was brilliant to see their cafe just, working how they wanted it to and thriving. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was so cool.
Thank you.
I'm definitely going to go there and try
You
it
should,
now.
yeah.
Along with analog photography and cafe culture, another trend that is taking over is sustainable fashion. And up next we have Amy here, who is going to spend time discussing the kind of rise of sustainable fashion as well as the decline in fast fashion.
With its low cost and trendy approach, it's obvious that fast fashion is appealing to all. Despite this, there has been a surge in the popularity of charity shops and sustainable fashion. I'm investigating whether we are seeing the tide turn against fast fashion and in a more sustainable direction. Firstly, I visited the Royal Trinity Hospice in Fulham, which was voted London's best charity shop.
Hi, my name's George Wright, and I'm the shop manager here at the Royal Trinity in Fulham. There's been a recent rise in popularity of charity shops because people are much more interested in sustainable fashion. They love that. They love the fact that they can come in to a well-curated shop and essentially find a bargain. Our customers are much younger nowadays, and they're much more aware of sustainable fashion. They're much more interested in pre-loved donations that we get. They love the fact that they can get one-off pieces here, so it's not like the usual high street shop where you can get anything several times. They can find one amazing thing for them, and they absolutely love it. We get lots of donations, we take them through to our sorting room and we sort through all the donations and really try and find the very best pieces which we can then put out for sale. Other pieces that we don't feel that we can sell, we pass on to our other charity shops because we've got 23 other charity shops. So there is a home for everything.
So my name's Nikki, I'm the Head of Merchandise and Sustainability at Royal Trinity Hospice. There's definitely been a culture shift towards more people shopping second-hand. At Royal Trinity Hospice we ran a customer survey, and consistently since 2021 the number one reason why people shop with us has been to shop sustainably. So it's fantastic to see that change in customer behaviour. The fashion industry is incredibly detrimental to the planet, but actually if we are able to increase the life of an item of clothing by 9 months, that can actually reduce its environmental impact by 20%. So here at Royal Trinity Hospice we are allowing our customers to get their fashion fix, but in a much more sustainable and conscious way. I think the future of fashion is people being much more responsible in their fashion choices. There's definitely a shift towards a more hybrid wardrobe where people are mixing and matching. So, for example, wearing a charity shop shirt with maybe a fast fashion top that they've had for years and years before we kind of understood the negative impacts, and some new products that's maybe purchased a lot more consciously.
With several stores across London and around the country, Charity Supermarket is the UK's first and only charity department store. It was founded as a way to get charity retailers into prominent spaces that they ordinarily would not be able to access. It has raised nearly £3 million for multiple charities and has helped raise the profile of second-hand clothes shopping. This Hammersmith shop shows that consumers are looking for longevity and sustainability when it comes to clothes. Next, I spoke to Penelope from MoMA Hilo, a sustainable fashion company based in Walthamstow.
I'm Penelope, I am the founder of MoMA Hilo. MoMA Hilo is a responsibly made women's wear brand, all made locally in London. So sustainability for MoMA Hilo is really important. We have a few kind of key core values within the business. One is that we always use dead stock materials, and we're trying to keep fabrics in circulation for as long as possible, and there's so many fabrics that exist in the world that we might as well be using what's there. We also only make to order, so if someone orders something then we make it, we don't hold excess stock within the company. Dead stock fabrics are fabrics that are left over from within the industry. They could be like left over from mills, from large runs of fabric that have been made, or they could be left over from other brands and businesses from styles that maybe they didn't sell or didn't go into production and they're just kind of sat there. Those fabrics could end up then going into landfill, so that is why I decided to use them. For me, sustainability is really like trying to keep something in existence for as long as possible and making it from quality fibres in the first place. So, for example, I use dead stock fabrics because they already exist. Some of those are natural fibres, some of them are blends, but they already are in existence. So then what I do with those things is try and create clothing in a really high quality environment using really high quality manufacturers, because then I know that those pieces will be in existence for a long time. And I think doing that along with like the made to order aspect of the brand means that is a sustainable business structure. There's no waste, things are made with quality and made to endure and last a lifetime. I feel like we've got more of an appreciation these days, and perhaps we definitely did in the past, but I think we had this like minute of like mass consumption and feeling like we have to constantly buy stuff. But I think now we're getting to the point where we actually want to know the nitty gritty of how things are made, and that's not just like in the fashion industry, but I think that's throughout everything. I think social media and like the internet in general has allowed us to be really curious about things, which is amazing. And I think the more we know, the more we can make better choices.
From small businesses to charity shopping, there are so many ways to shop fashion sustainably. Where will you buy your clothes from next?
I'm now joined by Amy. It's a bit weird to see you on this side of the chair.
Yeah.
But yeah, your video was really interesting actually.
Thank you.
What have you found were the main problems of shopping fast fashion, and what are the different ways people can shop more sustainably?
Yeah, so I was really shocked when I was researching about fast fashion. So the fashion industry is responsible for 10% of global greenhouse emissions, and on average, the average consumer today buys 60% more clothing than in the year 2000, which I think is probably more to do with the trends from social media. I think we all have very trend-driven wardrobes. So yeah, there's a big issue with fast fashion, but luckily where we live in London, there are just so many different ways to shop fashion sustainably. So an obvious one is obviously charity shops. They're dotted everywhere and you can kind of find them on every corner and you can get really good pieces there. Another one would be apps such as Depop and Vinted. They make shopping sustainable fashion accessible and easy, you don't even have to leave your room. And also kilo sales, clothes swaps, they're on the rise in London as well. And finally, small sustainable fashion companies such as Moma Hilo, like we saw in the video, they're obvious and kind of great examples that shopping sustainable fashion doesn't have to be boring and it can be exciting and new.
It's good that there's a lot more options nowadays.
Yeah.
But based on your research, what are the reasons behind this kind of increase of people shopping more sustainably nowadays?
Yeah, so there's definitely been an increase in people shopping fashion sustainably, like George said in the video. And the main reason for that is environmental reasons. I think people are a lot more aware of the negative impacts of fast fashion, so people are really kind of trying to get away from that. Another reason that I found was more of like an ethical standpoint. So I think we all know that fast fashion companies don't operate in the most ethical of ways. So a lot of people are shopping sustainably to kind of protest against that. And finally, it would be that you can get really great one-off pieces in vintage finds in charity shops. And that's a real trend among Gen Z, especially on social media, is getting these really cool pieces.
Definitely. Could you go more into depth about the different sustainable aspects of Moma Hilo?
Yeah, definitely. So the shops only open one day a month, and when you order the clothes, they take 4 weeks to be delivered from when you order them. So that's obviously a lot different to the kind of next day delivery model that we're all used to and that we all know and love. But when I spoke to Penelope about this, she said that she really wants people to kind of get a personal connection back to their clothes again. We've kind of lost that. And this idea of Moma Hilo stemmed from a suitcase of her grandma's clothing. So she never met her grandma, but she feels that she's gotten to know her through the different items of clothing. Each thing has a story or is nostalgic. So she's really gotten to know her grandma through this, and she really wants to bring that personal connection back to clothes. And it made me think, like, I don't have any clothes that I would want to pass down because they're all made of rubbish materials. So that's one factor. And also all of the clothes are made to order, so there's no waste in the company. Everything that's made is then going to be sent on to the consumer. And finally, the clothes all have an adjustable element, so you can make the size go up or down. So if you do fluctuate in your size, you don't need to go out and like buy a whole new item, and also it makes it easier to pass the clothes on to future generations. So the whole business is inherently sustainable.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. It's a really unique kind of business idea.
Definitely.
What are your personal thoughts about fashion becoming more slower and a lot more sustainable?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable that the fashion industry just can't continue the way it's going. It's just so bad for the environment. And when I visited both Charity Supermarket and Royal Trinity Hospice in Fulham, they kind of dispelled my misconceptions about charity shopping. They were all really well laid out with curated items, with great displays, and that's kind of why I shop in high street stores, to kind of get that experience. But they are proof that you can do that in a sustainable way, and they're definitely the future of fashion.
Yeah. What do you think is the most effective way to kind of spread and raise awareness about the negative effects of fast fashion and encourage people to kind of go more to charity shops and shop more sustainably?
Yeah, I think educating is the main thing. Penelope's fashion brand is run in a college, and each week she does fashion workshops with the students, and she kind of teaches them all about the kind of different sustainable aspects of running a fashion company. So the kind of highs and lows of that and how difficult that is as well. And I think she was talking to me about just how important that is to make people aware of the negative impacts of fast fashion. So I think it's obvious that once you educate people, that is then going to turn more people into shopping sustainably.
Yeah, well, you've clearly done a lot of research and kind of done a lot of exploration. So has kind of the making of this video changed the way you shop for your clothes now?
Yeah, definitely. I used to be a big high street person. I used to always shop in the big brands. Now I've started to use Depop and Vinted a lot more because I actually think you can find really similar pieces there. So I started to do that a lot. And another thing I've started to do is look at the fabric compositions of items, because nowadays 60% of clothes are made with plastic, and it can take up to 200 years for that polyester to decompose. And I'm spending so much money on polyester, so now I'm focusing my money on buying really good natural fibres and pieces that are going to last a lifetime.
Yeah, this video and this conversation definitely changed the way I'm going to shop now.
Definitely.
I've got to kind of think more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And bringing things back to Twickenham, Taaseen interviews people from the Boneyard about their blacksmith business and how they've used it to explore this creative endeavour.
I visited the Boneyard in Twickenham, a blacksmith forge located near Strawberry Hill Station. Neatly tucked away under the railway bridge, I spoke with Daniel King, the head blacksmith teacher, to speak about how the business came about.
So I just want to know what inspired Boneyard, what's the inspiration behind it and why is it established?
I think the inspiration behind it was the fact that there's not many professional teaching courses out there for blacksmithing that are quite accessible. So we wanted to create a sort of high-end product where you can come make a really polished piece and feel really proud about what you make. We just love teaching here, and we just love the look on people's faces when they've created something that is incredibly polished, that they did with their hands. So we wanted to bring that to people, I think.
How did your career start in blacksmithing? How did you?
I would say I did animation at university and I didn't really like it. I didn't like sitting working on a computer all day, so I decided to make a drastic change. I heard of a friend of a friend of a friend was a blacksmith, and I just asked him, how do you get into that? So I followed his advice. I went to a forge, became an apprentice for 2 years, did that, and then I wound up here and not looked back. It's been nearly 2 years. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I think maybe our goal here would be to provide people with a way to experience the more material world, the more physical world. Creating something from scratch with your hands that you've done wholly by yourself. There's no power tools or anything, you just have a hammer and an anvil and you create something that's very physical. That's come from you and only you. So we want to give that experience to as many people as we can because we think it's a very valuable one to have.
Sustainability is a key aspect of the Boneyard. What's the core reasons behind this?
I just think the world would be a bit better if everyone was a bit more sustainable in what they do. Most people work for big corporations that produce tons of waste. So we try and minimise that here. You get given a little bit of metal and you will forge that into an item. There's no waste with it. We don't throw away half of it. What you get will turn into something, and there's not really much waste at all. So we try and do that with everything we make here. Reusing parts where we can. Trying to minimise waste as much as it is possible, really. This sort of stuff. You make that.
Are there any other courses that you plan to do in the future, or what are the main ones that obviously do well here?
Well, our main one is most likely the 2-day kitchen knife course. That one's quite popular. In that course, you spend the first day fully forging out the blade, just from like a little bar of metal, and the second day is all about the finishing. So you'll take that blade, you'll grind it down, you'll polish it off, you'll etch the Damascus if you pick Damascus, and then you'll fit a handle block, and it's fully customizable, that course. So you pick the shape of the blade, you pick the handle, you pick the shape of the handle. So much customization. That's probably why it's the most popular, because you get total freedom about what you make, within reason, obviously. Yeah. You're not going to leave with a sword, sort of thing.
Yeah. What's been your most rewarding experience of working here at Boneyard?
Most rewarding experience, I'd say every day I come to teach a course. I just love seeing the look on people's faces once they've finished making a product, and knowing that they've spent the whole day working towards the goal of making that product, and at the end they get to see that they've actually done it. You know, something that most people don't think they'd ever be able to do. You know, even like making a wand, you know, people going home and playing with the wands that they've made is just a nice experience to see. So I love it all, honestly. It's all just a great experience.
What advice would you give people who want to get into blacksmithing or who want to do this and join a course?
I mean, obviously, if you want to join a course, come join a course. It's very accessible. We're quite beginner friendly here. There's no advanced experience needed. If you want to get into blacksmithing itself and pursue it, then I would say go on a course, see if you actually like it, and then just start making things. You just need to make as much as you can. That's how you get a portfolio. You know, just keep making, keep improving, and you will get there effectively.
It was great to visit a local business that is trying to get people to make their own treasured steel items. I was lucky enough to get my very own knife that Dan forged out of Damascus steel.
So when I joined with Taaseen, really enjoyed your video, Taaseen. I didn't even know what a blacksmith was before watching your video, so thanks for that. Could you tell me a bit more about what it was like being in a blacksmith forge?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, it's very hot. Once the forge does get heated up, which we saw in the video, temperatures do increase, and you're pounding steel, and you're obviously working really hard. It is kind of close quarters at the boneyard, but it's very well ventilated. They've kept the doors open. You know, they've got some systems there that just help to keep it ventilated. It's very labour intensive. You're breaking a sweat. You know, it's a given. There's a lot of equipment around as well, so like sparks do fly. Luckily, they do have specialist equipment, you know, with goggles and aprons to obviously make sure you're safe. But the hammering with heavy tools can make a lot of noise, so obviously you're there. And this forge in particular, Boneyard, was situated under a railway bridge, so there was a frequent train that goes off to Strawberry Hill Station, which is nearby. But I felt safe at all times. Daniel made it clear for me that it was very safe.
Mm-hmm. And has this always been an area of passion for you, exploring blacksmiths?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of grew up watching old like Japanese films of like samurais making swords, so I did kind of have that passion in the back of my brain where I was just like, I do like swords, do like sharp pointing things. Also, I'm in the kitchen a lot with Mum, helping out, chopping at the chopping board. So I do try to keep in there as much as I can.
Could you tell me a bit more about any upcoming events or courses that the Boneyard is holding?
Definitely. So the Forge does have courses including kitchen knife course, a tomahawk axe course, paring knives. They even make wizarding wands that Daniel spoke about, and barbecue tool sets, which we also saw. They're looking at making their own barbecue in the future. So I was lucky enough off camera to see a actual barbecue that they had made, and it was under construction still. But they showed me their tools, and obviously summer is around the corner, and it should be good for good weather. But yeah, definitely. I would say also that they're looking at getting people involved that are people who are behind the screen, you know, behind the keyboard, who's usually typing away. And it's for also creatives looking for a different passion, you know, to go into a different field. The Boneyard has a huge following on social media of over 13,000 followers on Instagram, so that's also where they get a lot of their viewership, a lot of their inspiration, and a lot of people who want to come and possibly look into taking a course there.
Yeah, sounds fun. I might go get a wand. But you personally, what did you learn from your experience visiting the Boneyard?
I learned a lot, like actual work that needed to go into making a simple knife was quite interesting, because you know, it's a given whenever you go into a shop or if you buy a steel item, you don't really see the process behind it. and seeing Daniel definitely hammer at those pieces of hot iron, hot steel, sorry, definitely did make me appreciate what I had at home. It also made me realize how like artisanal knives are made, and you know how those specific details in the knife are actually put in there.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you keep mentioning steel and how you use steel, and in the video Daniel discusses Damascus steel. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, Damascus is a Middle Eastern city, but it's named after that because of the type of high carbon stacks of steel that they put. So they put multiple layers of steel in, and they hammer it and they weld it and they put it into the forge, and that's essentially there to make it a lot more tougher. So by bonding them together, it makes the knife a lot more sturdy. I even, luckily enough, at the end of that video you saw, I got my very own knife from Dan.
Oh wow.
Daniel handed this to me, so if you guys want to have a look at that. Yeah, so that's a Damascus steel knife itself. Very nice handle. Not very sharp. He made sure it wasn't very dangerous. So luckily, but it was really nice to discuss about Damascus steel, and obviously that was something I had already known, and Daniel luckily gave me a piece of that.
Yeah, well, I'll leave the knife handling to the professionals.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Taaseen. That was really informative. So now it's time for our final cutaway. Well, that was amazing. We had quite a jam-packed show. I think my favourite videos were between yours and Halima's. I think the cameras were really interesting to look at. Even like the old-timey one was really cool, and yours was very informative, and it kind of gave me insight on how to shop sustainably.
Thanks. I think my favourite video was Flows, just because I've never actually tried matcha before.
No,
I know you love it as well.
It is really nice, I love it.
Yeah, but I just feel like I'm really inspired to try it. I see it all the time actually, so I might have to give Frothy a visit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have this afternoon.
But don't forget to follow the Londoners News YouTube channel.
You can find our fellow journalists Ella and Mackenzie talking you through some of the more local community stories.
It'll be great. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.